I'd like to invite Mr. Anil Singh, Vice President Global Partnerships at Spark Beyond. Thank you for joining us, sir. Let's have a round of applause, please. And finally, Mr. Manoj Verma, Head of Payments at Lyra Network. Let's have a round of applause and welcome him up. Thank you so very much, sir, for joining. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to commence with this session. And I hand over to our moderator, to Zubin.
Hello. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I know it's been a long day. Hopefully, we'll keep keep the energy high in this conversation. I think we'll start off with a very quick 1-minute intro in terms of who are we and what we do in our day jobs before we dive right into the topic. Manoj, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah. Hi, this is Manoj Verma. I'm representing Lyra Network. Lyra is basically a French company into payment solutions. So we are creating smarter, innovative payment solutions for merchant acquiring business.
Hi, everyone. I currently lead 2 platform engineering teams with PhonePe. One is the payments platform team, which powers every payment behind PhonePe apps and other PhonePe products, and a user platform team, which manages the user journey on the PhonePe platform.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm Zubin Tafti. I'm an executive director with PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, part of a practice called Payments Transformation. As part of the team, I look at all the work we do domestically with non-banking clients and internationally across the globe.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shetty. I'm part of the digital banking team at Axis Bank.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Anil. I'm representing Spark Beyond. We are a young Israeli company in the space of advanced analytics.
Okay, so I think we have a great panelists. We have people from the banks, we have fintechs, we have PSPs, and we have a advanced analytics player. So the right combination of participants for this conversation. I think we've all heard a lot about advanced analytics, words like AI, ML, in terms of embedded finance, payments that have been made invisible. And I think these are all powered by, back-end what happens there and how data is being used to be able to make these journeys a lot more seamless, a lot more friendly, a lot more invisible. To start off, maybe I can start off with the panelists to give maybe 1 or 2 examples to just give context to everyone. What do we mean by advanced analytics? And 1 or 2 examples of use cases that you all have basically either seen or implemented within your organizations, where advanced analytics was used to make payments a lot more effective and a lot more, seamless. Manoj, I'll start from you.
Today, the payments, the number of transactions that is happening, digital transaction is very huge. So with this huge number of data, we need to now see that how we can use this data to create more use cases and to help reach digital payments to the last mile. So if you see the use case with UPI started only with a single use case. But if you see the recent guideline, in fact, yesterday also there was a release saying that credit lines are now available on UPI. So UPI is a use case of data analytics. A lot of engineering data analytics has happened on the UPI transactions. Because of that, new type of use cases are coming on UPI now. Your RuPay credit card on UPI, credit lines on UPI, auto UPI. So this is an excellent use case where you can see a lot of AI, machine learning, new technologies have gone into this, and a new product and new use cases are coming up. Within Lyra also, we are seeing a lot of trend on these transactions and the behavior. So now what has happened with all this data that we have, we are also trying to ensure that there is a seamless journey with the customer. So when customer is trying to do a transaction on our platform, we are trying to give him a lot of predictions and a lot of payment options, which are very easy to understand and very seamless. And he has already done a lot of transactions using the same payment options, same methods, same tools. So we are making it very seamless, and the choice is automatic. So today in the payment flow, we are not asking him to choose a payment flow, but we are prompting him a payment flow, which is 99% the payment flow that he will go for. So this type of engineering we are trying to do using a lot of machine learning and AI. Similarly, there is a huge example that I would like to demonstrate here. During the e-commerce flow, there is a OTP flow that we use here in India. When you do a lot of transactions on mobile. Earlier web was used, but in India, globally also you see a lot of transactions happening on web also, but in India, most of the transactions are happening on mobile. And on mobile, the flow that has got implemented is very, India-centric, very, special to India. Wherein, the OTP is auto-generated, auto-populated, and the transaction just happens once you click, some buttons. This is not the same flow that happens globally, there is a different methodology. But the Indian method is little different. This is very India-specific. This has happened, to address the customer convenience and the way customer wants here in India. So a lot of behavior was seen in India, with respect to the mobile usage. And this flow was designed and innovated by the Indian fintechs. Similarly, with AI and machine learning, a lot of these things are, happening in India.
Sure. Thanks, Manoj, for that. So you talked about selection of payment flows. You talked about automating the OTP journey, and I think making the decision of selection of payment options more seamless and friendly for a customer as potential use cases. Pooja, over to you.
Sure. I think very similar, but I'll sort of break it down. I think as everyone knows, more and more lives and more touch points for both business and users are going online, which means a lot more data is available to take decisions. Originally, these decisions were primarily post facto and were taken for business decisions of what are the cohorts of the users, how to sort of make decisions for the business. But I think more and more where the usage is coming in is not only for business decisions, but engineering uptime and engineering system decisions. I'll give examples of those. And also ensuring, especially at PhonePe, with the number of stakeholders we have, whether it's consumers, banks, merchants, and other stakeholders, how do we ensure we protect them and ensure all the payments, for example, are safe for them? And as we use more tools and technology to process and understand insights, which is really the motive behind analytics, is to draw insights. Where we are getting to and is more taking more real-time decisions rather than just in reporting. And I'll talk about two specific systems at PhonePe where we are able to take real-time decisions based on data and influence either the consumer journey or engineering decisions. I can mention we have a system called anomaly detection, which in real time finds outliers in a payment behavior and influences the consumer journey based on that. For example, if you were using a UPI payment today and we realize that one of our partners is having an outage or the error rates are very high, we can actually use our anomaly detection system in line, take those decisions and prevent the user from going through a bad journey. So that's a very good example how it's been used in a PhonePe environment to keep the payment safe, keep the error rates low, and influence the consumer journey. A second one, which I think is very close to payments, is our fraud management platform, which we call Guardian, which also takes a number of real-time decisions around how we stop, basically detect and take actions on potentially fraudulent or malicious activities. So both these are very great examples how today, with the volume of data that, especially at PhonePe, where we're looking at more than 200 million transactions a day, we're able to take real-time decisions using data available to us to both influence the consumer journey and also sort of help in fraud detection and ensuring the payments are safe for both our partners, the consumer, merchant, banks, and of course the business. Sure.
Thanks, Pooja, for that. Samir, now over to you from a bank perspective.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll pick up on two themes. The first theme is hyper-personalization. So it's one theme that we've been working on for a couple of years now. The intent is that when a consumer logs into our app, earlier every consumer basically saw the same app. So everybody saw the same kind of screen. Today what happens is that different people will see different things. So as an example, you may see that you have a personal loan offer for 4 lakh rupees at 12.5%, which is very, very specific to you. It's not a generic up to X and starting Y and so on and so forth. Pooja may see that her re-KYC is due in the next 30 days, and so she should do it. And I may see that I have some SIP which is coming up for payment, and hence I should keep my account funded. So what we are able to do is we are able to show very specifically to a consumer what next action they should take or they potentially can take basis the data that we have about them through payment flows and everything else that we know about them. And this we find is significantly better at engagement. So if you look at click-through rates and so on and so forth, we see multiple X improvements compared, when we look at some other actions that we propose to customers. So hyper-personalization is something that we made early inroads into, but that's a theme that we hope that we can work through and make the app more and more personalized for an individual versus, just a generic one. The second theme is what Pooja also picked up on, which is this fraud. And, how can you use advanced analytics to in process, right? This is not cooked data before or, action afterwards, but as the consumer is making a payment, how do we, or not just a payment, but anything, but how do we kind of at that time detect some fraudulent activity happening and stop that transaction and hence kind of protect the consumer. So these are two themes I thought are important. There are many, but these two are, in my mind, the most interesting use cases of data.
Anil, from your perspective, maybe India or maybe elsewhere that you've seen.
Sure thing. So we started the conversation by saying data is the new oil. I think in the payment space, the velocity, the complexity at which we generate data, it's more like crude oil. So if you want to think about the role of advanced analytics is that refinery, which is distilling insights and helping the organization into decision making. Now, my colleagues have spoken about fraud, about hyper-personalization. I'll give you a couple of scenarios which is more forward-looking. Scenario number one, if we take the context of fraud. Now, every organization in their silo experiences fraud. But this is this weird game where the fraudsters are coming up with new schemes, and your objective is how can you capture that early on. So now what technology, and I think this is where advanced analytics is going, is we have systems like confidential compute, which allows cross-companies data sharing in a compliant manner without a human operator seeing that. Distilling insights across that helps you bring a 360 view of what's happening across the industry in a geo across countries. Now, if you look at, I had a couple of conversations, at least in the US market, where you have industry consortiums. They are coming together and they're thinking through how they can pool data, run analytics, and the common objective is how can we detect fraud early on. The second example, again, I think getting insights is one thing. Getting a machine learning model and prediction is completely second. But the fundamental gap in deploying analytics in payments or any organization is how do I get adoption up for my frontline workforce? If my relationship manager, if my call center exec doesn't understand what is the output of analytics, the adoption is always low. And what we are seeing with generative AI and ChatGPT is entire focus right now is on productivity, a co-pilot type experience, or a focus is on creativity, writing emails. But the same principles of taking that conversational AI experience, which can synthesize or translate the outputs. Let's say an insight as a mathematical expression when translated in English is far more powerful because it will speak to the person sitting on the front line. And again, I think that's an advancement which will happen pretty soon. And that will drive adoption of advanced analytics, especially in payments industry when you have such high volumes of data coming through every day.
Thanks, Anil, for that. So I think, in my view, I see three buckets. Like the first one is either making something convenient for your customer or getting more customers in. Two is, I would say, anything to do with optimizing, using data to be able to, you mentioned about re-KYC. These are all costs that typically would, you prompt the customer to get done quicker, faster. And I think the third element is the trust. I think whether it's fraud, anomaly, it's basically trying to ensure that, data is used so that the trust is given back into the, the payment ecosystem to be able to perform well. So I think we've heard a variety of use cases from different lenses. I think let's look a little bit on the technology lens. And for that, I'll look to the left of my side, where, trying to understand, and Pooja, we can start with you on this one, is that, what are these technologies, and, from an overall, any advice from overall architecting, how should you architect yourself if anyone new is going to start up in this place or needs to evolve so that, data and advanced analytics becomes easier to adopt and use from a tech standpoint?
Fair. I think there's certainly no one size fits all, right? With the amount of data that is getting generated or is available with all the consumer apps or technology, but that also means while we have lot more advancement in technology, it means it's become a lot more complex with the number of either products and tools which can be built, by the technology teams themselves, on-premise software, or something that is the SaaS solutions that are available. I would say 3 principles to look at, and pillars, or something that we should look at before getting onto any journey, whether we're buying a product, utilizing any technology, is understanding what are the sources of data available. They could be varied. It could be a click stream, an event stream, or offline files that we get from somewhere. Understanding the complexity of the sources, the size and the volume of data, which makes a lot of choices around what is available in the market versus would you want to build something of that sort. The second, of course, is towards the end of it, how are you going to use that data? Is it something purely for visualization, analysis, business decision, or that will be an input into real-time decision-making, some of the examples that I gave and other panelists gave. So is that data something that will be also used by upstream other applications? And in the middle, of course, once we have figured out what are the sources, what is the consumption pattern, is the technologies that you would need to store this data and process it. There are multiple data lakes and data warehouse solutions. And I think I can't give like one answer because it really varies from org to org. But I can give an example at PhonePe where we, given the volume of data that we have, we've obviously, built a lot of these technologies and services from scratch. For the example, the fraud management system I spoke about, we have our own evaluation engine, which is a rule-based engine where our fraud assessment teams, analysts can build the fraud rules. There's an evaluation engine. Behind that, we have knowledge stores, and we use technologies like Elasticsearch, HBase, Aerospike for different kinds of data that are required. And similarly, on the for our analysts, we have data lakes and data warehouses, which is a completely different use case in fraud management. So I think it's a very huge space right now, but I think it starts with understanding your data strategy, what are the sources, what kind of processing will you need, and of course the outputs to sort of zeroed in on, narrow down on the choices that are available. One last thing, I know we have a little short on time here. I think it also depends on the journey of the org. All the products, engineering and technology can be expensive, both the engineers and the technology which is purchased. So I think it's also important to look at that fourth aspect of where are we in the journey of the product that we want to build or the company, and assess the cost of buy versus build. At PhonePe, we had a guiding principle of building for long term, and that's why we made those choices. But it may completely vary for maybe another organization who's just starting out and want to use initial data and would prefer to sort of buy that technology. So just high level there.
Thanks, Pooja, for that. Manoj, from a tech standpoint, what would be the considerations?
So on the tech side, if you really ask me for startups, this type of tech is very expensive, So in fact, for me, We can wait, startups can wait to when they are trying to decide on the tech side, because this type of techs are very, very expensive and not needed for a startup immediately. So for startup, my recommendation would be, to create a solution which is plug and play, seamless, very light, API based, mostly device agnostic, form factor agnostic, tech agnostic. Tech is a barrier. When you scale up, normally you feel that you need to shift completely on the tech side. Completely change the tech stack. The complete environment you need to change. Sometimes you will think about AWS. Sometimes you will say, let us put it into our data center. So this type of choices is coming up all the time when you try to scale up. So deciding on the tech is very important, yes. But when you start, I think, you can keep the tech light when you start. And mostly you should try to see that you're not trying to fix yourself with any one form factor or a tech. You should be open, keep it light, so that whenever you want to shift, it is easier for you to shift and it is not expensive. And AI and other tools, unless you're trying to do a specialized, business use case in these type of fields, I think you don't need it in the initial stages. And you can, of course, hire, which is the services of the companies which is available at the moment. This is what is my recommendation. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Manoj. So interesting views, build versus buy, focusing more on build. Manoj, you were saying that take smaller steps, do what you need to do in-house, but you can leverage what's out there and leverage and integrate with solutions there. Great. So I think let's move gears and change to a different lens, and this is more from an people and organization front. While it's great that tech is making all this possible, and you in your role as digital also, how do you get or how do you structure an organization to be able to adopt all these new things that you develop? How do you ensure that in organization, and there's adoption, right? And I would say the use cases are plenty and they cover business teams, tech teams, ops teams. So how, just from an org and people perspective, what are your inputs or insights to be able to structure an org such that adoption, usage, leveraging technology to be able to make advanced analytics to make payments smarter works out well?
Yeah, so I think the one big step back point I'll make is that how the people rally around this is perhaps more important than the technology or the use case, right? Because finally it has to be executed. And I think some learnings we have is one, you have to start with a problem, like a consumer problem, not a analytics problem or a technology problem, because otherwise it's a hammer looking for a nail, right? So like there is you have lots of conversations around, like right now the conversation is what are you doing using generative AI? And so generative AI has become the solution to everything, which likely means that it will be the solution to nothing if it goes that way, right? Because you're not starting from the customer problem. So first is that there has to be a problem, and then you have to put a team behind that problem. That team will include people from product because they have to think about how analytics will solve that problem, right? Like in the case of our hyper-personalization, the mobile banking team had to think about which nudge to show, how do you prioritize, where do you show it, how do you make it actionable, what's the CTA, when the customer clicks on the CTA, what happens, etc. So there's a product thinking around it. There is the technology behind this, because as Pooja mentioned, a lot of this is now, so see this world of let's do this some analytics and then do some customer segmentation and then put it out. I think that it will continue, but now the world has gone to saying real time. Like the guy has come, customer is trying to do something, now how do we react? So technology becomes very critical. And how you kind of link various databases, how do you create the actions, how do you do analytics real time and throw a solution becomes very important. Analytics obviously becomes very important, and that's a very different skill set compared to tech, right? So how do you kind of write your models, how do you get all the data together, and so on and so forth. And by the way, here the data engineering is the, so if you think of an analytics program, 90% of the work actually is just getting the data right. Right, which is the data engineering, right? Getting data in one place, ensuring that the data is clean, ensuring that it is usable, and so on and so forth. So data engineering becomes important. And obviously there is the overall risk, compliance, governance, all of that becomes important. Now, how you get these guys, and by the way, each of these, if you kind of go into the market and hire these guys, they are not that widely available. B, they are very expensive. And C, they have a mind of their own. So the analytics person has a certain, outlook to life. The technology person has a certain outlook to life. If you let them be on their own, they will build whatever they want in their own kind of nice silos, right? So, so this kind of being problem backed and kind of getting these people together and saying, look, now let's figure out how we solve this problem, in my mind, I think is the toughest and the most important thing to do.
Thanks, Amir. So I think problem-based, purpose-based, and then get all the team together, different competencies to be able to build the solution, but don't lose sight of the problem. Anil?
Sure thing. So I'll give you a real life example from India, and we've partnered with a bank over here and had the opportunity to go from zero to a steady state where we are talking about 1.5 billion predictions happening in 2 to 3 days. Now, interestingly, like the view I take is building out an analytics org is no different than building your own mini startup within the organization. And what that means is it needs to start at the highest level with the right incentive structure. Two is what you're trying to solve requires people from different skill sets. So you require people coming from business background, you require people coming from technology background, and how do you bring all of them together? So that's sort of part one. I think the phase two of that is where you do rapid iterations of prototypes. So if you can tie back the use cases to what's your top line, bottom line impact, I think, and then prioritize the problem statements and then move into rapid prototyping. During this phase, it was important to bring in business stakeholders in the loop. Typically, the output of analytics and the language that a business stakeholder understands are 180 degrees apart. So how do you bring this together? I think that revolves around a culture of creating this cross-functional team in the solutioning phase. And then when you try to scale this up, that's a completely different challenge. That's where I think where Samir mentioned around bringing your data together, making the critical choices of what your tech stack would look like, just not from what you need today, but from a resiliency standpoint, a unit economic standpoint. Today you might require, let's say, 100 million transactions, but 5 years down the line, it needs to handle 1 billion transactions. So how do you bring that perspective of cloud or ecosystem, because you can't build out everything in-house. At the same time, if you can find the right ecosystem partners who can interoperate with you, I think those are the learnings for me, essentially, where we worked with the team, identifying the use cases, rapid prototyping, and then moving into that phase where we scaled it out, and today it's pretty much industrialized. A byproduct of this also is now where we have relationship managers and frontline people who are talking the language of analytics. So it's not about a data scientist sitting in an isolation on the ground floor, working his magic, and the big boss sitting on the 11th floor. It has changed. It essentially is a pod structure where rather than wrangling on data, if you have the right foundation set up, they can focus more on the output creation and drive a dialogue with business and converge towards critical decisions much faster. I think that change does take time, and that only happens if you operate in a stealth mode or a startup mode. If you build it out linearly or sequentially, you're more bound to fail than succeed.
Thanks, Anil. So you talked about initial incentivization. You talked about prototyping quickly, moving fast. I think the one aspect commonly that I heard is the diversity of the team that comes together to be able to build the right, right analytics for the right use case or the right problem to solve for. I think we'll move now to another lens, which would be more on the compliance standpoint. And we know that sometimes data gets used, abused, consent. We have data protection bill that's just come out. And Samir, maybe I'll come to you on this one, is how does one design to stay compliant? And sometimes, technology is moving faster than regulations. Sometimes regulations lag. So what are the principles, or how do you remain ethical, and what are the choices that you need to make so that you build out this analytics so that at some point later it should not become construed as something that's not compliant?
Yeah, so I think see where the world is moving towards is kind of this notion of the data being the new oil, which has the underlying connotation that data is an asset. But I think soon data will continue to be an asset, but will come with its own liability as well. So with the, as an example in India with the data protection law, where the world is, and at least where India is moving towards, is to say that consumer's data is the consumer's data. It's not the ownership of any organization. It's the ownership of the consumer. And the consumer can do whatever he or she wishes with that data, and the organization cannot. Right? So this is kind of broadly, I think, where we are going. I mean, obviously there are lots of details here. But I think as this progresses, it'll place a lot of responsibility on people who hold data on behalf of customers. So the way we would think about is that we are holding some data of the customer on behalf of them. And much like we hold deposits of customers on behalf of them, and we have lots of responsibilities, we have similar responsibilities on the data front. And by the way, it's not just about banking or fintech, it is true about every company in the country, and I'm sure over time in the world as well. So what that means is that a lot of practices that have come to become normal around, as an example, how we take blanket consent, and what do we do with that data, we will have to rethink. Companies will have to rethink a lot of this, and particularly this consent-based usage of data will become more and more prevalent. And so that's something that we'll need to do, build our tech, build our business processes to be compliant to all of this. This is a lot of work which has to be done over the next 2 years before the law comes into effect.
Okay. Any views from a fintech startup perspective in terms of data and how you might change your perspective or change the way in which you use it or leverage it given protection laws that are coming in?
From fintech standpoint, fintechs I feel is more responsible. Like the banks. The bank always had the data. If you really ask me, banks always had the data, but consumers in India is not worried when data is with the bank, because bank is a trusted entity within the entire ecosystem, and till date we have not seen data getting misused. But similarly, fintechs are also more responsible. Data is mostly related to the payment transaction, card information, other information. So it is very regulated, and fintechs seems to be more responsible with data. They understand the sensitivity to handle this type of data. The challenge what we see is the intermediaries which are not regulated. Or the platforms or the social media platforms or any other intermediary or platform which are not regulated, these intermediaries are not very serious to handle the data. So the main, a lot of data is available here and there, and if you see, even in fintech, even in transaction processing, any other process, there are multiple entities involved to complete one single type of process. Even if you try to buy an insurance, there are 6-7 entities involved to buy one particular product, and data is available with each of these entities. But the regulated entity is trying to handle the data in a particular way, but the intermediaries are loose on data. So we need to fix this problem where intermediaries are also made responsible, to handle and protect data in a certain way. This will, help us in a great way. This is what, we would say. Yeah.
Thanks, Manoj. So I think 2 points. One is, earlier data was mainly considered as an asset, but now with regulations and all, I think responsibly managing it, giving options that today the regulations want in terms of right to forget. Like earlier, you couldn't tell a company, forget me, delete everything that you have about me. But with laws coming in, those are things that organizations will have to start building for and catering for, which India may not have built for. And I think I get your point where you're saying that, payment ecosystem there are a lot of hops, there are a lot of intermediaries, while say a particular holder of the data needs to be compliant, but he's also sharing, and I think ensuring that everyone in that ecosystem stays compliant, and these need to be taken care of are important aspects going forward from a data compliance standpoint. And I think We're kind of almost out of time, so I think I just have one last question, and maybe I'll start from this end this time. Anil, what would be one very futuristic use case that either you plan to implement or would like to see go live from a, data analytics being used to kind of make payments smarter? So what would be one use case that comes to your head that you find you would want to get done or see get done?
I think for me, it would be the notion of blindfolded analytics. Like if the industry players can come together, pool data in a safe, secure way, run analytics, and that will solve multiple problems. It can go all the way from AML type use cases to frauds, and the benefit is mutually available. I see an incentive for people to come together. The technology is right now available. I think it's more putting your heads and minds and hearts together at the highest level and making it happen. And it's happening outside India. So why not India?
Interesting. Sameer?
So I think so fraud is one, and you like as an example, if you can pool banking data, telecom data, and so on and so forth, and then manage fraud, it will be far exponentially more powerful compared to just one bank or one payment entity just using their data. So that is one. The second one I would say is that how can we make the customers' consumer data work for them, and so they get what they need at the point they need it in the form that they need. And so if you can get to that level of personalization, I think that is a great use case in my mind.
Okay, so you're telling a consumer that if you give me this, I can in return you could get this benefit from the data.
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm just saying if you open an app, the app is completely about you.
Okay.
And it is able to predict what you need at that point in time and in the form that you need, versus just showing you stuff and then you going and choosing what you want.
Personalized
At a very different level. Yeah.
At a very different front line. Pooja?
Sure. So I think a use case that would love to see solved. We've been talking about the digital economy and the financial inclusion. But using the amount of data that we have to also bridge the economic divide in the society, the use cases such as when there is disaster relief, right now we have very formal channels of relief funds being gathered, let's say by the government and other agencies, but getting into predictive analytics to solve such use cases. Other examples are, I think, we know a lot of people sort of drop through the poverty line by just one hospital bill away. They're just one hospital bill away, or a lot of, children drop out of the school because there are no means to pay for the education. Using analytics, just not for financial inclusion, but also bridge that gap for economic divide. That would be a good one to see as a next step.
Yep, very interesting one. And Manoj, last but not the least.
So I would say, for me, convergence of IoT and payments is very important factor. With IoT also taking shape in India now, there are a few initiatives from the government wherein government is trying to put smart electricity meter in the country, which is again a connected device with IoT enabled. Estimate is that around 25 crores of smart meters will get installed in the country. Again, this is a connected device. My vision is to how we can do payments and IoT together. This is what I'm trying to aim.
So make payments almost invisible or seamless, whether it's meter for power, meter for water, or fuel for car, let's say. Okay, great, very interesting. So I think that's all we had, guests. I don't know if there's time and whether we want to do questions, but otherwise we're into the panel. And thank you very much, my fellow panelists.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. Thank you so very much to all our esteemed panelists.